Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, all about price sensitivity. Our title for today is Unlock Hidden Profits with the Price Sensitivity module or methodology. So today I will give a presentation together with Arjan Oosthoek, who is the co-founder of Simpson, and we will take you on a journey, could be sometimes a little bit abstract, but we are just trying to inform you as much as possible about this topic within the pricing domain. Right. So for today, first of all, we want to give you a small introduction about how this webinar is going to run so that you have an idea for the intent. So for who is this webinar and what you will learn, etc. So for today, the webinar about price sensitivity, we focus on our target group is the pricing specialists and obviously the experts who are active in the pricing domain, because a certain level of knowledge is obviously required to understand the topic. Secondly, for people who already work with price sensitivity and are constantly aware that there are certain limitations to the computes that they make with the utilization of the elasticity model. And obviously for the people who are looking for smarter and more accurate optimization models, and with that also the pricing. The three things that you will learn in the session: the first one, the challenges that we see with the traditional pricing tool; secondly, what the method of measuring is in the sensitivity model; and thirdly, how these sensitivity models drive real results and have true impact on your margin. And we will also dive in on the, let's say, the average business case that we see coming across in our business, at least, to give you some insights from the experience that we have had in the last months in deploying these models in different organizations. Right, and as final remark, what hope we to achieve with you by the end of this webinar is that you get an understanding how product grouping based on sensitivity can help you to increase your margin or your revenue, and finally, obviously, how you can take action to become a hyperlearning organization and mix your, let's say, domain knowledge with these types of models to accelerate the business and to be better positioned. All right. So in general, let's say in 99% of the case of the businesses that we support, and when we talk about these models, we see that a lot of businesses still are steering their organization based upon a certain level of gut feeling, and that the models that they use, or let's say what you see here, Excel sheets that are within the organization, lack different dimensions of analyses to steer the margin in the direction that where the potential is. What we have tried to do is, once we look into an organization and once we see all these Excel sheets who are quite complex in terms of obviously how they are made, and a lot of hours are spent to build them, we also see that there is a high level of the prone to errors, and we see just that there's a high level of knowledge required to transfer the knowledge within the organization. And with that, the organization becomes a little bit static. So we want to try to change the situation, to bring you a model and to talk about a methodology that maybe could change this perspective for you as a business. So then we want to talk, obviously, as first on the business case. So what is now the average profit leakage that we see within a business if they are not able to position them well in terms of, if we only take the perspective to price sensitivity, right? So on average, we see, and this is more or less, let's say, an average of things that we see coming by, is that the business is doing roughly 100 million in revenues, and we see that the gross margin roughly 25 million, and then we already see that purely based upon sensitivity measurements, there's a business case to be made of 1.25 million. What is then obviously a 5% improvement of the 25 million and a 1.25 percentage absolute margin increase of the overall revenue, and that is a super nice result. And for sure, if you can imagine that these types of let's say if you want to invest in these types of models, let's say that you roughly are looking at a yearly invest of 60K on a potential return of investment of 1.25, then that is a super nice business case to work upon, and almost in that sense, obviously a no-brainer to the business to start with it. So in general, you can always ask yourself the question in terms of, can you afford for your organization yourself to not invest in such a setup and to be then in that sense also reactive. Right, and obviously, based upon what we just said, we fully understand, and based on all the cases we have now handled year to date, we see that it is not easy to understand or to change the margin to an optimized position, because organizations are in that sense super dynamic, right? So, and this is also one of the reasons why we see optimization is difficult. The market is dynamic, the organization is dynamic. If we take the market perspective, just let's take the last few years. What we have seen was the aftermath of Corona. We have seen the Houthis in the Red Sea. We have seen a war in Ukraine. Lastly, we saw a tariff circus from the USA. All these different aspects that are running in the market constantly influence the way we have to make decisions within our business and maintain our prices. And these dynamic circumstances bring a true challenge to the operation and forces organization to bring that agility in their process. And with agility, we mean that the processes also and the way you execute your pricing obviously should be aligned with that. And that is a difficulty organizations have to overcome. The second thing that then becomes obviously a thing is that once you dive into these types of models and you want to start using the data, the other barrier to get to an optimization position is how relevant is the data that you have as a business, and how relevant is also your historical data to the execution of the model. And just to give you a few examples, because sometimes we wonder what do we exactly mean with data, right? So there's something next to only transactional data, right? Because maybe we need to register it also in our domain. If we are dealing in a high commodity market, we want to know what were the prices of our competitors during the time that we made that price change. What was the context of the business in that time frame when we made decision A and when we made decision B, and what was there a result of? So all these dynamics that you take into consideration in your historical position is actually data that's valid to understand the number that we use to eventually make a compute. And flagging all your events and your circumstances, etc., becomes more and more relevant in understanding the future, right? So the back and forth position is a broader context than just transactional data. And the third one is obviously the price elasticity, where we also see that there's a limited scope. Price elasticity not always applicable in all situations. For instance, high commodity, high dependencies on your competition, but also when you have, let's say, a really slow repricing cycle, so you can only your prices are quite static and you are trading large volumes, then you just see that if the orders just come in bulk and it is just one order where you do a lot of quantity. Then you see that you lack actually that transactional data. Although the business size can be humongous, it can still drill down to only a few transactions that you see coming by, and with that eventually having, let's say, less statistical proof to eventually run these types of elasticity models. And these are just challenges that we need to overcome as a business. And then the second of the fourth thing, and this is also a little bit in line with what we just discussed in terms of the limitations that you see in price elasticity, and that's the pricing cycle, right? So if you're a B2B business, for instance, and you have a contract with your clients that you can change prices once a year or maybe once per 6 months, then you only have 2 price points, right? So once we do an optimization round and you only have limited possibilities to adjust the price, then that A/B testing can become quite consuming. So we can assess that in a value chain how close you are to the consumer, how more, let's say, price changes can be pushed to the market to run your A/B test, but how higher up you are in that value chain, how more difficult it eventually becomes. Meaning that each A/B test that you do should be really well thought out, and you really want to generate a test what delivers data and delivers a result that you can use as a feedback input for the next iteration that you are going to make. And with that, obviously, scientific research becomes more important. And the last one that we want to bring in is that product grouping is obviously not simple. a couple of things. Each product is unique in its characteristics. That's by nature one thing. But the other thing is that we see is that once organizations try to utilize elasticity and they see that they don't have enough data on one specific product, they start to group products and then say, okay, based on all the transactions that I make in this product group, I want to have an average elasticity score based upon all the products, and that gives me then the direction what I want to do with the pricing in a specific category, in a specific brand, whatever you have, and how you are organized. And the difficulty with that is that eventually you can underestimate the power of the position that you have. So some products it will serve well, but can absolutely be the case that that direction that you eventually choose will harm other products, right? So the maximum potential that you can reach with your business is now not being achieved because you are cluttering data that in some aspects better not be cluttered. I don't say that bundling is absolutely not applicable, but being really secure and knowing about how you want to execute that and which decision you make in that data process is really relevant to eventually get to that optimized price. So that's why this is a aspect that we just want to bring on your attention, because it's also something that we see coming across quite a lot. So with only these 5 mentioned, and there are tons more, but we wanted to bring to you the 5 that we see coming by most often. It means in general, obviously, that with these 5 aspects that we need a different approach. And that approach we are going to dive into right now, together with my colleague, as said, Arjan, who will take it over from this point and dive into the presentation of the sensitivity methodology and approach.
Yes, thank you, Vincent, for introducing more the business impact of price optimization. I will first start with explaining more the conceptual part of price sensitivity with one of the cases we went through with a company. So you see here an infinity loop. It's about hyperlearning, and with price sensitivity, the hyperlearning vision we have as a company with Simpson really comes to life. As you probably already know, also if you attended previous webinars, we have a vision where we unite the human expertise from the company together with machine learning to actually combine the best of both worlds. And the best of both worlds in this part is, of course, a higher margin. And that's what we will explain with this loop. So it actually has 3 loops in our hyperlearning approach. First, we start with the organizational learning. So we start with actually getting and capturing all the knowledge which is hidden in the organization, such as how competitive is your product, what are the customer priorities. So we capture all this knowledge to define what are the price drivers for your products. This knowledge can be hidden into your sales team, in your marketing team, your finance team. Every stakeholder that is involved in the price setting can have his input to capture the knowledge, what should be in the price model. Second, we have the machine learning learning loop, and this actually trains all the input from the customer, from your organization, the organizational learning, to see, okay, what are the weights of all these input from the company. For example, if brand value is one of the factors, you have different brands selling in your assortment. Yeah, the model can bring you insights that one brand is more sensitive than others. So if you change a product with a brand level, an A brand can be more sensitive to a price change than from a B level, from B brand. This is just an example. We give you more examples later on. And the other learning loop is the scientific learning. Of course, we are already in the business for a lot of years, and we serve many customers. And we can also give you a head start from theory, scientific theory. What are the price drivers in your industry, combined also with price drivers which are already used for other similar companies. And this is a learning loop. We actually it's continuous learning loop, but you have to start somewhere with a model. And based upon new results, this learning loop will accelerate. And this is how we see this is a competitive advantage for your company to learn as quickly as possible and to benefit from these learnings. This is more the conceptual part. I like to explain the whole price sensitivity methodology with a case to give you a little bit more background into this case is based upon a group of companies, a mother holding with all kind of daughter companies, where this mother holding is really looking for a kind of single source of truth, which they can apply with price sensitivity drivers, because all their companies, the daughter companies, are similar organized. They have the same kind of product characteristics they sell. Yeah, you see here some details about the revenue and about the product assortment to give you a little bit more background. And they're really looking for a single sort of truth, an optimization method which can easily be copied and scaled and duplicated to the multiple companies they manage. So how does our methodology work? It actually works in 3 steps. First, we define the rules, then we fine-tune and train the machine learning model, and then we take action. And our Simpson platform has a big role in all those 3 steps. It's actually automating this methodology. Let's first start with the rules, and this actually covers also the organizational part in our hyperlearning loop. So let's imagine you just start this by scratch and you have all your stakeholders involved for your pricing decision making. Let's say sales, you have finance, you have marketing, you have your pricing team, and you just ask them, okay, if you just start from scratch, what are the price drivers which are deciding if you can increase or decrease your price to improve your margin? And if you ask this question to multiple people, you get multiple answers. And this is what we call the puzzles. And it's not that some are wrong or some are good. It's more that we combine all these pieces of the puzzle in a complete overview, because every rule you have based upon the experiments in your job could be true, but we let it up to the model. So in the first phase, we just cover all these points. So for example, sales input could say, if a product has more than 2 competitors, it could be more sensitive than products without competitors. If a product is sold in a high season, it could have a different price sensitivity than low season. That can also be examples which we can test, and finally let the model judge what is the real impact of this price driver. However, you see here a lot of drivers. Not all puzzles can be a driver for deciding if it's impacting the willingness to pay of your customer. For example, some are just basic automation rules, like the cost price. If your cost price increase, your sales price can also increase. This is more an automation rule and actually says nothing about the willingness to pay for your customer, because this is more a price driver. So this distinction we made actually for you so that we can focus on really the price drivers, what is really impacting the decision for your customer to accept a price increase or not. So this is about what the rule based. This is really based upon getting all the expertise from your company, and this is what we call the prior knowledge as an input for the model. So how does it work? The model part. We build actually a model based upon the input you have as a company, and we just let your as a company kind of make one consensus of how important is each driver. So for example, if you have the number of competitors, we let you say, okay, to what extent is the number of competitors influencing the decision and the acceptance of the customer that is willing to accept the price increase. So this is the weighting process. We do that in Simpson, that we just drag and drop all the drivers which are in your price sensitivity model, and we let them weight the weight of each driver. To be a little bit more practical, how does it work? You can actually compare the outcome of the model with a kind of a thermometer. As you know, the thermometer is for the temperature. So when it's really hot, it's red. It's in the upper part of the thermometer, and the same goes up for the price sensitivity model. When it's really sensitive, it gives the highest score, and in this case, the model predicts how sensitive the product is. In this case, we have 4 type of sensitivities. It could be very sensitive, it can be moderately sensitive, moderately insensitive, and very sensitive, which can be compared with very hot, moderately hard or warm, insensitive, moderately cold, and very cold. So this is an example. This is a product, B2B product. It's a kind of a heating pump from Bosch. It has a number of price drivers. It had 7 competitors. The brand value is an A brand. It's Bosch. It is often first in the order ranking, which from the company, the input was, okay, if it's selected first in the order, then it's likely to be more sensitive. It has a certain value in the product life cycle, which decides the influence the price sensitivity, and is a key product in the installation. So it's also a key product in the customer perception of buying this in his customer behavior. You see on the right side the weight, and the weight is decided by the model with a combination of sales data, but also based upon product attributes. The big advantage of this methodology is that we don't always need full and complete sales data to test this methodology. Because, for example, brand value is already an existing product attribute of your product life cycle as well, key product as well. So you can test and train this model and use this model, even if you don't have a lot of data in your organization. And this is often the situation in a lot of B2B companies that have a very long tail of products, a lot of slow movers. That's actually a big advantage compared to, for example, price elasticity models. On the next slide, you see more an overview to apply these price sensitivity insights, where you have, again, these 4 scores, but then more in a quadrant. Because in the end, most of our customers that use the price sensitivity module in Simpson have a goal to increase the margin. So you want to know, okay, if I have these 4 types of product sensitivities, which buttons or which products should I act upon to increase my margin? You can start with a very insensitive product, which is the upper part of the quadrant. These products has the very insensitive product, so it's here. These have a very low quantity, a price change. I see it's wrong here in the slides. I'm sorry. The very insensitive product, a price change here has a limited impact on the quantity. And when it's very sensitive, a price change has a lot of impact on the quantity. So if you want to think in low-hanging fruit, you can better do a change in a very insensitive product, because here a price increase has a very limited impact on the quantity. So therefore, it's in the upper right, because this is the low-hanging fruit. Secondly, below we have the moderately insensitive. So this is slightly less insensitive than the very insensitive. So in this case, you can also do a price increase, but could have more impact on the quantity than the very insensitive ones. The very sensitive products are often also kind of key value items in your assortment. If you change this product in price, then probably the impact on quantity will be high. It could be a good decision if you want to increase these products in market share or in kind of customer perception, that you give this product a more attractive price. Especially when you are, for example, a wholesale company or distribution company, when you have customers that buy products in combinations. It could be that this very sensitive product can be decreased in price to stimulate that customers will increase the share of wallet or increase the purchase of a combination. And then we have moderately sensitive products. These products have a low impact on margin, a low impact on if you do a price change, because here you can do a price change, but the impact on margin and volume is less effective than the very sensitive products. Our software system will help you identify which product belongs to which quadrant to act on it. And that's actually the next step, which we'll discuss in the next slide. So act upon the price sensitivity outcomes. This is also a bit conceptual, but this is the classical graph, I think, between price and quantity, where we have a line, and usually the higher the price, the less you sell in classic economical theory. This is also often true with our customers, unless you have a monopoly, but usually the higher the price, the lower you sell. That's also the classic price elasticity curve for our Simpson users, how it's developed. However, with price sensitivity, it works kind of similar as price elasticity, that we want to know what is the impact of a price change to the quantity. So as explained in the previous slide, we have these 4 quadrants. If we focus on products which are insensitive, we give them a price increase because the quantity will be the same. We expect a limited impact on the quantity. But if it's very sensitive, our suggestion, recommendation is to decrease the price because the impact on quantity is high. If you go to the next slide, going back to the case study results, we often use this methodology to test it in the initial phase. And therefore we decide, okay, we have a control group and we have a test group. And usually that's split between customers so that we have 2 groups of customers, or that can also be 2 different types of locations, where the control group just gets the as-is situation. So none of the products are based upon price sensitivity. And with the test group, the products are based upon the recommendations of price sensitivity. It's really the flexibility to the company, how much price change you like to apply. You can be aggressive as you want, but it depends on the context of your organization, how aggressive you want to go with discounts, or how aggressive you want to go with your markups. That's really about the company, and it's also flexible in the software, how far you like to go. To give you a little bit more insights in the results, this is specifically for this company, the test results. We saw very effective results when it came to price decreases. So the very insensitive products gave a 14.3 higher revenue compared to the control location. The same goes with the margin changes. The price increases were 16%, 16, more increase than the control location. And the same goes up for the quantity change. And we decreased the prices for the products which were very sensitive. There, the quantity change was also very effective compared to the control location. And this is all based upon data of a quarter. We usually test it for a minimum of a quarter because then you see often good results, especially in B2B. On the next slide, you also see a very important graph because the goal is always long term. So the price, the total business case for this price experiment compared to test and control was a business case for 1 quarter of about 71,000. But more importantly, the effectiveness of the price setting shouldn't be short term. And that's why we also take a look at the combinations. So you see here on the right side is that you also want to see, okay, if we decrease our prices, we like to avoid cherry picking, so that one of the customers only buy this individual item. And therefore, we also measure the combinations. And in this case, also the combinations. So the share of wallet the customer buys was also increasing, which gives us for us the indication that the price decreases were very effective because it avoids the cherry picking behavior of customers. So in the end, it's all about margin and revenue, how we test and evaluate the impact. But coming back to the slide where I was beginning, it's all about hyperlearning. So if you test with this approach for a quarter, the model will be retrained with the new data. And this is where the machine learning and the organizational learning will be activated again, because the organizational learning the organization gets also feedback of which driver was more effective and more influencing than others, but also to learn about accuracies, because not the model is, especially in the first phase, not 100% accurate. So you can also learn, hey, were the expectations different than the reality? And this is where you continuously learn. And this is really our vision, that if you start with this, you become smarter and more intelligent as a company. And you learn actually every day, every week, how to influence the customer decision making. I'll give the floor back to Vincent to do the closing part of the webinar.
Yes, thanks, Ariane. Yeah, so in general, just to summarize and to conclude on the webinar we have just given, I think in general we can conclude that complex markets lead to missed margin due to the complexity, and that we need a more, let's say, advanced view in terms of how we digest that data and make eventually a decision. We also understand from this presentation that Excel or traditional pricing tools as price elasticity have limitations in their scope. So it's good to realize that and to understand when is the moment for your organization there to do it on a different way, because that margin is running out of your business and you want to make a change. The third one is that the use of price sensitivity model helps you to identify the drivers on your price and how that influences it. So it makes a more comprehensive overview of the dynamics where you are active in. 4 is any price drive can be included in the model as long as data is available. And as said, that is the vision that we also carry with this model, is that you make a consensus model, and what we do is constantly iterate with new circumstances, understanding the sentiment of the market and price with the business in that sentiment, where we eventually, how better you do that, how better the margin eventually is to the organization, and how better you then also are positioned, obviously, to capitalize on your market share and expand that as well. The fifth one is that the categorization of the sensitivity model helps you to have different buckets, so that helps you to get a operational execution of such a model. So the execution can be just 4 different quadrants, although the backend can be really comprehensive, right, and intelligent and advanced. So I think that really helps organizations to bring something that can be scientific, quite hard maybe for a large part of the organization to grasp. But if you translate it to just the price, the up, the downs, in terms of the sensitivity score, that really helps just to have that operational progress and process in place and get everyone on their journey, so that you have a good incorporation of these types of models. And the last one is obviously to take action, that you need to take action to maximize revenue or margins. And that obviously you want to do that in a way with such a model without compromising your demand. Then, as a final step, obviously, if there are still questions, then this is the moment that you can send them in via the chats that are available, and then we will take the coming few minutes to try to answer those questions in terms of how they resonate to the model.
Yes, and to help you a little bit, we also collected some frequently asked questions, which we often get from our customers before we start with this. So the first question we also have collected to give you a little bit more time to think and type your questions. What if our pricing data is incomplete or messy? Can the model still work? Yeah, that's a great question. Again, I think it's really important. It doesn't necessarily you have to be complete data. I think you can also work with incomplete data. Because if you touch a couple of price drivers in a model, it can still give a sensitivity score. However, messy data and unorganized data, we like to, of course, have more organized data. But on the other hand, thinking in models can give you also feedback how to organize it better. So it's a learning process. That's why we like to share our vision about hyperlearning, that we don't have the expectation that everything is already complete and organized from the beginning. But it's also a learning process. If you know which price drivers are really important for your business, you can better organize this data later on. But it's better to start with a kind of an incomplete and not 100% correct model to start with, and later on make it more complete with more organized data. So this is the learning process. Our customers go through. Eve, another question: how do you deal with price changes in the control group? This is a really great question. To translate your question, this is often what we see, and maybe Vincent, you can answer it. But
Yeah.
what we see in use cases is that we have a test location where the model says, okay, increase or decrease. But we have a control location where, for example, salespeople are still changing their prices. So maybe Vincent, you can answer that one. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions around this topic. In general, what we always try to do is how can we make the control group as constant as possible, and also to keep the dynamics running as they normally also would, right? So one is just following business process as regular, and the one is following the adjustments based on the sensitivity model. And with that, you get, let's say, a good reference of what would happen in normal circumstances in the control situation. In different businesses, you have different approaches, and yeah, it kind of depends on the context how we want to go about it. We even had one specific group who said, let's keep the control group just as untouched as possible and only work on the one that we have changed, and then normalize the data based on the seasonality that they normally experience during a certain period in time, so that we understand what is, let's say, the effect of the seasonality, and take that normalization approach on the data, so that we then can really filter out what the difference is in terms of the added value of that model, of the price change that we have done. So there's, I would say, per business, there are some, let's say, approaches that we can define as standard, although you always have to keep an open scope concerning the business context, how you can best approach the changes that come by in the control group.
Yeah, so next question: how does the model handle big market changes like new trade rules or supply chain issues? A good question. I think in general, we can distinct the drivers into, okay, which drivers can we influence and what are more external factors. Of course, we can exclude external data and external factors, but I think we have to realize which one is unique, for example, Corona or big supply chain impacts, and which one are recurring. And when it's recurring, then you can consider to include it in the model. But when it's something really unique and incidental, then you have to think, okay, is it recurring or is it something unique that you including that in the model is not something you have enough data for. So yes, you can include big market changes, but I think the big market changes should have a kind of a repeatable repeatable behavior to make sense to include it in the model to predict on it. How often should we update or adjust the model to keep it accurate? Vincent, do you like to take this one?
Yeah. I think once you have, I think what Arjen also said is it's a learning journey, right? So once you have in the organization established, let's say, the situation that you are reflecting on the model, that you come to a conclusion, that you start to wonder, hey, is this a driver that could influence the price as well? And do I want to include it in the model? Yes or no? And do I want to run the test? I think that is just something that happens. And if you come up with these new, let's say, insights, then it's always good to start to think about the test and to discuss it with each other, and then see if the scoring of the data delivers any relevance, right? And then the other one is how often do we adjust to run a model? Well, let's say that it is also depending on the pricing cycle of your business, right? So the model can be updated frequently, right? So that we can just iterate on the model and make a second version out of it, based upon the inputs that the organization delivers or new insights that we get. And then depending, obviously, on when you do a rerun, you eventually get to that final version of the new rerun, where you can maybe have in some situations the old model that we have designed in the first time, and then the adjustment is then the second model, and then for a temporary period in time you run both models, will produce a price list as an output, and then we measure the predicted margin impact and see if model 1 is better in its performance than model 2. And then if model 2 is, for instance, more successful, then you can switch from model 1 to model 2, and you scale with that one till you get to new ideas for model 3.
Can this approach work for niche products or industries with unpredictable buying behavior? Good question. I need to think about how to understand this one, and especially how to define unpredictable buying patterns. But at least niche products, yes, I think we do this for customers that produce or sell niche products. But the model is really the model really excels, the price sensitive models, in deciding, okay, what kind of product attributes or what kind of specific circumstances are influencing the buying behavior and the willingness to pay. I assume it could also be for niche products, for unpredictable buying patterns. What could be? Vincent, do you have any?
Yeah, my question would
ideas?
also be, if you have an unpredictable buying pattern, what's then the business case of the business to build structural business and revenue flows upon? Unless these orders are obviously of such a humongous value that it's worthwhile waiting on it, and that you are already successful if you do 1, 2, 3 sales of these things, for instance, on a year. But still, then I would say that there are, let's say, general characteristics where you would assume, if you analyze deals that you did in the past, what were the drivers, if you ask that then to the successful transactions that you have done, what were the drives that eventually were decisive for the customer to eventually go with your business and to ship it out. And that would be, let's say, the first step of the model, to start understanding, let's say, what is then the approach, and is price then indeed a really important factor in terms of how that is coming across with all the drives included. And based upon that one, we should make then a judgment based upon, let's say, the company's input and the model's input in terms of what the relevance score to that is. But that unpredictable thing, I would love to, if that's still possible for the person who sent it in, to give a little bit more context to what is then the definition of that unpredictable part.
I think we have still room for or time for one more question. I can take this one. How long should we run a pricing test before we trusting the results? I think this is similar to the answer that Vincent gave before. It really depends on your pricing cycle. So how often do you change your prices, and on your industry? What we see in B2B is that it's often a quarter when you can see, okay, now we are kind of safe to draw conclusions out of the price test. So were the expectations we set from the beginning, did we achieve that or not? We already see kind of a trend after a month, but after 3 months, at least 2 months, you see already the real outcomes where you can draw conclusions out of it. This is more in B2B. With B2C, let's say if you're an Amazon or Coolblue, which is a more dynamic market, you can even see this when you have enough data and many customers, you can even see the impact for price test after a day. But it really depends on the data and the market you're in. But definitely B2C, you need less time to see if the experiment was successful than for B2B, when customers have a different kind of buying cycle and it needs more time to adopt.
Yeah, I think you can ask that question also to yourself. If you are from a specific domain, what is normally, let's say, how we call it, the velocity of change in your market? So if you have historically done price changes, what was the first time one of your customers was getting into the phone and was giving you a ring? Hey, your prices have changed. What's happening? I'm satisfied or not satisfied, whatever the outcome then of that phone call is. But it tells you a little bit how long does it till your market is noticing, or that they are reacting to the changes that you are pushing through the funnel. And per market segment, that can be completely different. But as Arjen said, if you take, let's say, a mid-sized organization on average, 3 months is a nice first evaluation point to see how the data has come about. All right. Then we have come to the end of this webinar. We hope that we have given you some inspiration internally to look at these models, and hopefully we have uplifted your knowledge in this domain a bit. We really want to thank you for joining into this session. And if you have any questions across the model, or you just want to have a discussion about it or whatsoever, or have additional questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. Always happy to assist and to share more insights that we have gained over time to help you to position the business a bit better and to gain additional margins. Right. Have a nice day.
Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.